Good evening, agus fáilte go féile na Bealtaine. Welcome to our Bealtaine Living Earth Festival. My name is Owen Gill and I'm with CalMAST, the STEM engagement group from Waterford Institute of Technology. Normally we would be outdoors at the moment. We'd be meeting in one of the wonderful sites around the southeast of Ireland. About to be led by one of the guides around the area and learn lots about biodiversity and our natural environment. However, with the COVID restrictions, we have to make do with an online engagement with people. So we have been running this festival for 16 years. We estimate that over 40,000 people have come to it. And now, with the restrictions, it actually gives us an opportunity to engage with people all around Ireland and around the world. So we've lots of people from every county in Ireland and from around Europe, North America, the Far East, Australia. So welcome to everybody, and I hope you find something of interest here. This is the month of May, and that is the reason for our festival. It's to celebrate the start of summer, the growth, the flowers in bloom, the vigorous growth of the leaves, and also the birds nesting, insects becoming more plentiful. Really, nature is alive and thriving now. So it's a great time to grab our attention for nature, and that's why we have the festival now. And it's called Bealtaine because Bealtaine is the Irish word for May, and it's an ancient Celtic festival celebrating the end of winter and the beginning of summer. So that makes it a very appropriate name for us. So it is our living earth. It's celebrating all things living in the earth and the interrelationship. So we've got two videos today for you, and we've got two guests. We're going to go firstly on a tour of Mount Congreve Gardens, but firstly I'm going to uh, show you, I'll give you some announcements about some feedback from viewers. So firstly, I want to highlight this wonderful booklet that has been produced, and it's called Gardening for Biodiversity, and it's available through all the county councils, and we're going to put information. It's going to be on our website, and we put information about all the great resources that are out there for biodiversity, and we'll have them on our website. This is a wonderful handbook, and we know that there's lots of people who are very active in their gardens. And now this week with garden centres opening up, there'll be a lot more activity. And this is a great resource to go to see how you can make your garden more friendly for biodiversity, to promote biodiversity. And you'll enjoy your garden much more with butterflies and bees and birds sharing it with you. Also, we have our friends in the Wexford Wildfowl Sanctuary are participating in the festival again this year, and they're putting up a quiz on the website. So there's two quizzes. This one is Do You Know Your Birds? And I think I know that one there. I'm not sure how I'll get on with the rest of the quiz, but I'm going to give it a go. And then there's also a Know Your Mammal quiz. So that's on the Wexford Wildfowl Reserve website, and we'll put links to that on our website as well. Next up, we have we got an email in, and this comes from Amy, age 9, and Rory, age 7, and they sent us in this picture of a beautiful flower and in a wild setting, and they wanted to know what it is. So we had a bit of a discussion here. Sheila thought that it looked like a primrose, and the leaves and the flowers themselves looked like a primrose, and Cordula was arguing that it looked more like a cowslip, with the height and the shape of the overall flower. So what did we do? We talked to our friend Yvonne Grace, who's a horticulture lecturer in Waterford Institute of Technology, and she came back to us and said that it's an oxslip. And she said it's a cross between a primrose and a cowslip, and it is a native plant. So Yvonne will be here tomorrow on the panel. So if you have any more questions about plants or any pictures in that, please send them in and we'll put them to Yvonne tomorrow. And then if you have anything to send us, queries, questions, complaints, or comments, please send them to us by social media, Twitter, Calmast at CalmastWIT, Instagram is the same, Facebook is Bealtaine Biodiversity, and you can email us at calmast@wit.ie. Unfortunately, we can't seem to get our chat working on the website. We're still working on that, but we're very much trying to catch up with the technology here and get what we can to you as quick as we can. So that's a little. We'll have a little more at the end of the show about what's coming tomorrow. There is a lot more happening in the world of biodiversity, not just in our festival, but with lots of partners and other groups around the world. It's a very big week into biodiversity, and we'll be bringing you some more of that news at the end of the program. So we're ready for our first visit. I am just realized you can't see me. You're still seeing the contact page, but that's fine because you don't need to see me anymore. We're about to go on our visit to Mount Congreve Gardens, world famous gardens that are in Waterford, and they're very interested in history, beautiful gardens known around the world, and when the lockdown is over, you'll be flooding down to see them. So here we go on our visit to Mount Congreve Garden. What is behind the locked gates at the moment? We are missing this.
Hi there. Join me for a virtual stroll around our garden. We all need a little break from the stresses and cares of the day, so come along for a couple of minutes and see the spring blooms in part of our 70-acre woodland garden. The original gardens at Mount Congreve consisted of a simple terraced garden with woodlands of ilex and sweet chestnut on the slopes leading down to the River Suir. Ambrose Congreve began planting parts of these in his late teens, but it wasn't until 1955 that he began making large clearings in the woodlands to create the necessary conditions for new plants to thrive. In the early 60s, Dutch landscaper Herman Doel joined Mr. Congreve, and the two men spent 40 years developing what would become one of the great gardens of the world. The collection consists of 3,000 different trees and shrubs, 2,000 rhododendrons, 600 camellia, 300 Japanese maples, and so much more. Mr. Doel received the Orange Order of Nassau from the Queen of Holland, whilst Mr. Congreve's achievements were acknowledged by Queen Elizabeth, who awarded him a CBE, and by Trinity College Dublin, which granted him an honorary doctorate. Mr. Congreve afforded his long life to having a garden to care for. He died on his way to Chelsea Flower Show in May 2011 at the age of 104. I hope you enjoyed today's little ramble. Take care of each other. Be kind. We'll see each other again soon.
So that was amazing. We are joined on the panel by Dr. Liam Lysaght, who is the director of the National Biodiversity Data Centre, and Ray Sinnot, who is the Estates Manager in Mount Congreve Gardens. Ray, that is absolutely spectacular what's on the video. What an amazing blaze of colours that are there. What profusion of growth. Can you tell us a little bit about the gardens, Ray, and how they came into the hands of the state?
Okay. They were developed by Ambrose Congreve, the last of the Congreves to live here in the estate. And he set about creating what he considered one of the world's greatest gardens. And it's won many plaudits over the years. It would be fair to say that he was more of a plant collector rather than a garden enthusiast. So for that reason, we've ended up with a vast collection of plants. I think it's 50% of the plant species in Ireland are held here, not just here, but certainly here. And we would have 80 acres of gardens now between the woodland gardens, the wall garden, the parklands around it, the different areas. What Mr. Congreve thought, I think, late in the 70s was that he wanted to ensure that these gardens would be protected into the future. And the best way to do that would be to leave them in trust to the state. Now, the difficulty was at that time, Mr. Congreve was relatively old. He was in his late 70s, and he thought that he would die in the next couple of years. But he didn't. He lived to be 104, and he attributed that to having a gardens to care for. So in the intervening years, he spent, I guess, a lot of the money that he had earmarked for the development of the gardens into the future after his passing. So we were left in somewhat of a limbo when he did die, that we didn't have enough funding. So then it became almost like we had to find an answer. So we had to speed up the process for the state to get involved. Now, they still haven't got involved and we haven't been taken over as of yet. But what we have is an agency, as they call it, set up. So it's now a trust and there are nominees onto that trust. I answer to that trust and it's held in place and it will eventually be handed over to the state. So it came about, I think, he had an altruistic vision that he wanted to do something good for the area. He's from here, don't forget. So it was something to give back to the people. And it's one of those hidden gems that I'm from Waterford. I'm from Ferrybank, which is in Waterford, of course, not Kilkenny. And it would be, I studied plants when I was younger, but I had heard about Mount Congreve and confused it for Lord Waterford's place, which most people do, because it was very much a private estate. And it was designed for Mr. Congreve and for his enjoyment, which that's up to him. So we have now taken steps over the last number of years to make it more visitor friendly, and we've increased our visitor numbers and people are now getting to know it in a much wider context, which is what we're hoping to do, increase it even further so everybody can enjoy it. Not just the plants, but the area where the plants are. I always think that the garden is just a space, and it's the silence that's out here and it's the nature that's out here that makes it so special, I think, not just the plants.
Well, I think after seeing this video, I think that people will be flocking down to see the gardens. Amazing experience. Liam, you are actually from Kilkenny, but we'll leave that aside. The Mount Congreve and estates like that, how important are they in as homes for biodiversity?
Owen, actually, I'm from Limerick. I just happen to live in
Oh,
Kilkenny, so I have to
apologies.
clarify the record for my
Yeah.
Limerick. Well, obviously, any of the having, as Ray has said, such a diversity of flora in an area like that, it would be a real wonderful area for all types of insect life, in particular pollinators and the like. So the more diversity of flora that you have, the more insect life you'll have. And of course, Ray will know that the soil and everything will be in really good shape because it's been looked after so well. So it's probably a kind of a honeypot really for biodiversity in that on that part of the river. So it's a beautiful area.
And Ray, have you special areas that you've set aside for pollinators? I mean, obviously you've huge profusion of plants that have flowers, but have you wildflower areas for butterflies and the like?
We do, and we change them around every year as well. Some of our visitors might have been familiar with the wildflower that we planted up on our greenway approach last year, and this year we have one in from the wall garden that goes up to the main house. Sometimes we put signs up so people think we didn't miss a patch. We're not being lazy. We didn't. It's intentional. It's absolutely intentional. So we have a few areas that we've left them go back to wildflower meadows, some that we help along the way by putting seeds in, others that we just leave them develop. And we have also an area up to the very western end of the garden, the grass path. Outside of that area, there's a rather large, it's not a lawn, it's grassland, and we've left that grow wild. So we're very aware of the pollinators, and it's a union, I would say, between us, that we like to keep the areas, we like to limit pesticide use, absolutely limit it, absolutely limit herbicide use, which it can leave weeds, and real people, that real garden enthusiasts, accept that. Some of our some visitors would and they're entitled to pass comment to say, I just noticed there's an area up there by the door and there's some weeds. That's also intentional, because they're only weeds by somebody's marking them as a weed. So yes, we're very aware of our pollinators, and we keep as much of it wild as possible, while still maintaining the garden, of course.
And of course, it's worth pointing out that the gardens are on the banks of the River Suir. So there's a kind of I suppose, a corridor for biodiversity there to link to other areas.
Well, of course, and also that has helped with our red squirrel population and the pine martens. We've had incursions over the years by grey squirrels, but we still have a lot of grey squirrels here, and pine martens, and I think that's not only the road outside, which ordinarily it would be a problem, but it helps grey squirrels crossing into us. And then, of course, on the north side we have the river for the entire length of the estate, so we're very well protected by that, and that helps with the garden as well, of course, bringing in sea air. It's tidal up past us, probably as far as Portlaw, if not further, that we have nice salty air coming in, and it helps with it's something of a microclimate almost within the gardens, with our own shelter belt and the very acidic soil that we have here. So it all helps, it all ties in together, I think, with the biodiversity in the area. It is, as you said, it's a corridor for us. And it helps now with the greenway. It gives people right beside us more of a vantage point to see the gardens from the outside looking in, which also helps.
I think if I may add there as well, I think its proximity to the greenway, as you say, Ray, is that Waterford City and County Council have done tremendous work in actually trying to make that greenway more biodiversity friendly. So there's 48 kilometres really of a strip of land, yes, that's beneficial for biodiversity. So it's all linked. It's a wonderful area.
Yes, and just before we go, we're going to go to another video in a minute. Now, Liam, as the director of the National Biodiversity Data Centre, you're I suppose the person who has their finger on the pulse the most about our biodiversity. Tomorrow is World Bee Day, and I just would like to clarify to listeners that's not a sanitary appliance we're talking about. We're talking about the the honeybees and the bumblebees and the solitary bees. So overall, Liam, how was this lockdown? Is it positive for biodiversity? Is it any change, or is is it in any way negative?
I think it has to be almost universally positive, really, is that first of all, it coincided with a really nice April. The weather was brilliant, so wildlife, insect life was actually doing very well. A lot of public land wasn't actually mown, the lawns weren't cut, and it coincided with the peak time when there's dandelions and daisies and things flowering. So in public spaces in towns and areas, they looked fantastic. And that critical period about, mid-April, when traditionally you'd go and cut your lawn and cut the dandelions, that's really crucial for pollinators and particularly bees, that they have the resources to get you over for an extra couple of weeks into May. So, it's too early yet for us. We do monitor populations of insects, so it's too early for us yet to actually quantify that. But I think that this spring, from a biodiversity perspective, has been tremendous. And of course, the added benefit is that we've been sitting at home, so we've been in a proper state of mind where we've been quiet and peaceful and able to enjoy the nature around us. So it I think universally it would have to say it was beneficial for biodiversity.
There's anecdotes about people saying that their cars, when they drive, are covered with insects, and they haven't. I think Nick McCarthy was telling me that the other day, that we haven't seen that for years. So that's anecdotal. It'd be interesting to see when the figures come in. What you say there is interesting about us being able to enjoy the biodiversity. People are taking time. It's our release. Ray, you must be the most wellness person going to be sitting amid 80 acres of.
You could ask the staff around me that, and I think they might give you a very different answer. It's not without its challenges, like all of us. What I would say to touch as well on what Liam has mentioned, and I know about there is anecdotal that it would seem to be that everybody has noticed more of nature around. And I had this discussion earlier with someone that it was almost, and with all that's gone on with where we are with the government restrictions and the COVID-19 and the bad news story and the tragedy that's been involved, and of course people losing their lives, and it's all bad news, but there's always a glimmer of hope. And within that, I think it gave everybody an opportunity to press the pause button for a while and just to see, because all of us, everybody who's in this world today, we're all in a rush.
Yeah.
We've all got deadlines. It's always pressure the whole time. And I think there was a point, and it felt like the whole country breathed out a breath of air and thought, I can't be in work. I can't be in the shops. I can't be anywhere other than with my people around me. And I think now, of course, once we all get back up and running, we'll forget all of that 20 minutes after it starts. But I think there is something in that to be appreciated and enjoyed at the moment, that of course there's all bad things, but there's always good things within that we can say, yes, I remember somehow what it was like to just sit down and have a coffee and enjoy the noise around me without worrying about the boss coming in, or I had to do something. Like there was a nice time. It was almost like the entire country was on a vacation, for albeit an imposed and not very happy vacation, but something of a vacation. And I think I would hope that there are learnings to come out of that we will learn to appreciate more things and learn to appreciate what we have around us
I think there is a hope, and I mean it's a question for wider society. What sort of society will we have after this? And will we go back to our old ways of consumption and destruction, or will we be more measured and sensible? And I think one of the things, though, that it has allowed people to take time to notice nature, and for some people are saying to us for the first time ever that they've noticed nature around them. So we're hopeful that at least we will have learned positive things. Some people have dreadful health problems and suffering, and then we have, isolation for others. But I think everyone has learned to appreciate and notice nature, which is very positive. I'm going to go now and play our next video. This is a video from the National Biodiversity Data Centre, and it's all about Ireland's bees. And this is in the lead up to Bee Day, and we'll have more information about Bee Day after the video.
So if you're in your classroom and I asked you to put your hand up if you had plants for breakfast, you might say, oh, but I bet you really did. You know, you might have had Rice Krispies, that's a plant. You might have had cornflakes. Maybe you had some toast, which comes from a plant called wheat. Or you might have had tea or coffee, or maybe you like chocolate spread. Those all come from plants. So it's really important to us that there's lots and lots of plants in the world because they provide us with food, and they provide us with lots and lots of other things that we need to survive. And pollination is something that has to happen for there to be enough plants. So pollination is when pollen is moved from one flower to another flower of the same kind. And when that happens, the plant is able to make a little tiny seed. And the seed is a tiny little baby plant just waiting to grow. So if you get pollination, you get a seed, which means you get more plants. So plants have worked out lots of really clever ways to move pollen from one flower to another. Some plants make their pollen so tiny that we can't see it, and it floats around in the air. The wind blows it around in the hope that it'll land on another flower. Other plants have become really brightly coloured, and they produce lots of a sugary liquid called nectar. And those plants are trying to encourage an insect to come and visit them in the hope that the pollen will stick to the insect's body, and when the insect goes to the next plant, it'll drop some off. And of those insect pollinators, the most important ones are bees. Bees are totally vegetarian, so they just feed on flowers. So the grown-up bees, they feed on nectar, that gives them energy to fly, and the little baby bees, they're fed only on pollen. So it's really, really important that in the countryside, in our schools, in our gardens, there's lots of different kinds of flowers so that the grown-up bees can go around and collect lots of different kinds of pollen, so the baby bees can have a healthy diet. In Ireland, we've got 98 different kinds of bees. That's a lot of bees. You know, imagine that's a lot of classes if you're in school. That's a lot of classes that you'd have to put together to get 98 people. And if you did that, one person would be a honeybee, just one. 20 people would be different kinds of bumblebees, and 77 of you would be different kinds of solitary bees. And honeybees, they live in hives, and they've got huge families. So if you're a honeybee, you might have about 50,000 brothers and sisters. And the most important thing about honeybees is that they make honey. And they're the only bee that does that. We've got then 20 different kinds of bumblebees and all sorts of colour patterns and different types. You might often think of the one that's black and yellow stripy, but that's just one. There's lots of gorgeous other bumblebees, and I bet if you go out into your garden or into the school at playtime, you might see some of those different kinds of bees. There's one, it's a lovely one, it's got ginger on its back and then blonde hairs. Or there's another one that's totally black with just a red tail. Bumblebees don't make honey, and that means the bumblebee has to hibernate over the winter when there aren't any flowers. So once the bumblebee queen comes out of hibernation, she's woken up in spring and she finds some good place to make a nest, then she makes a wee tiny wax pot and she fills that with nectar. And that gives her food supply for a few days. And then she goes out and collects loads of pollen, as much as she can. She collects as much pollen and she brings that back to the nest and makes it into a little loaf, like a loaf of bread, but made out of pollen. So she leaves that in the nest and then she starts laying eggs. And bumblebees are a bit like birds. They have to sit on their eggs to get them to hatch. And it takes a huge amount of energy for a bumblebee to do that. When she has to sit on her eggs, we know that she has to visit about 6,000 flowers every single day just to get enough energy to keep those eggs warm enough so that they can hatch. Bumblebees are really important pollinators, particularly of things that we like to eat. So things like strawberries and tomatoes, apples. And we know, just as an example, just one strawberry flower, that has to be visited 5 times by a bumblebee to get a strawberry. You know, so it's really important that there's lots and lots of bees so that they're there to be able to do that important pollination work for us. Solitary bees, we've got 77 different kinds of those. They come in all shapes and sizes. Some of them are small, furry, a bit like bumblebees. Some of them look a small bit like wasps, only a lot friendlier. And some of them look are little black that look a bit like flying ants. And most of our solitary bees are called mining solitary bees. And that means that they make their nest by burrowing into bare soil. They make a wee tiny burrow into bare soil, either flat on the ground or on a south-facing slope. They make this little burrow with about 10 bedrooms, and then the mum lays an egg in each bedroom, and she goes out and she collects as much pollen as she can. She makes it into a ball and mixes it with a bit of nectar, so it's like a big ball of food. And she leaves a ball of food beside each egg in the little bedroom, and then she closes it off. And the grown-ups die then at that stage. So solitary bees only live for a very short time, usually about 6 to 8 weeks. So most of our solitary bees in Ireland nest in that way. There's a small number of them that aren't mining bees. They're called cavity nesters. And they nest in cavities, so the cavity's like an existent hole. So it might be a hollow stem, like bamboo, something like that. Some solitary bees will live anywhere, so you find them in your garden, in the park. There are some that only like to live at the beach. And they make their nests in sand, and they like to feed on the kind of plants that you get on sand dunes. And my favourite bee of all the 98, my favourite one is called Osmia oriolenta, and it's a cavity nesting bee. But what it does, it doesn't nest in holes in wood or walls, it nests in empty snail shells on the beach. So without bees, we wouldn't be able to grow our own crops, we wouldn't be able to grow our fruit and vegetables, and there wouldn't be any wildflowers in the landscape. And those wildflowers provide us a lovely, colourful place to live, and seeds and fruits that mammals and birds and all kinds of other wildlife like to eat.
Okay, welcome back. We are back with Dr. Liam Lysaght, the Director of the National Biodiversity Data Centre, and Mr. Ray Sinnot, who's the Estates Manager for Mount Congreve Estates. That was Una Fitzpatrick from the National Biodiversity Data Centre talking about Irish bees. Now, Liam, I think that everyone at this stage will know there is a crisis or a problem with bees in particular. Is that true to say that there is enough public awareness of this?
Well, I think actually to say that there's a problem with bees in particular probably isn't really correct. We have a problem across the board with biodiversity, but I think everyone, pollination, people understand we call them ecosystem services that they're providing us. So people can engage with that. You know, if you say that soil biodiversity, for example, is decreasing, it doesn't really resonate with people. So they're representative really of what's happening in the wider countryside. But yeah, there definitely is an issue. We know that about a third of the bee species in Ireland are threatened with extinction, which is very dramatic. But I suppose the good thing is that because people understand and appreciate the value of pollination to us, there's been huge buy-in from people and local communities and councils in terms of trying to actually do stuff to help biodiversity. Now, as Ray mentioned, even leaving areas unmown or, mow areas out on a 6-week cycle, those kind of things have huge benefits really. And what we're looking at is we hope that the cumulative impact of everyone doing a small bit will actually turn things around.
Yeah, and how important, there's a lot of I suppose talk about farming and our farming practices, and I know a lot of farmers are really getting on board with this because they understand about crops and the like. But how a lot of our listeners will have gardens and that. How important is the typical suburban garden?
Well, to be honest, I'm not entirely too sure how you'd quantify that. But I mean, to say that if everyone leaves a small little patch of wildness, let's say, in their garden for nature, the cumulative impact would be tremendous. I think I saw a colleague of mine, Juanita Brown, has just published a book about garden biodiversity that you made reference to, I think, on at the start. Yeah. And if I remember correctly, I think she said there's 2 million gardens in Ireland. So like that is a huge land bank that even if corners and edges, you still need your nicely cut lawn, but you can leave margins or you can leave areas for wildlife. So, it's a case of if we all did something in our own area, it would certainly be beneficial. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think it's becoming more socially acceptable to leave your garden grow wild.
Yeah, well, I suppose at the time we've gone through a very strange phase, like maybe 30, 40 years ago, there was an awful lot of wilderness out there. So we like to have a nice and tidy area near us. But I think it's changed now in that actually the landscape is very manicured. So we're trying to bring a little bit of wildness back into the areas. So it's been flipped on the head. But yeah, it's become. I know that I jokingly we were at Bloom last year, and one woman said that she oiled her lawnmower and she got it ready to use, and she felt like she was being a biodiversity terrorist by trying to cut her lawn. So you know, it was a joke, but there certainly is. There's a change in people's attitudes.
Yeah, yeah, and work by people like yourself and all our partners like Mount Congreve and that,
Yeah.
they do great work in environmental education. And this all adds up. This all adds up. We've about 40 different partners and links around the southeast, and all this adds up. And I think that in general, I think that there's a much greater awareness of biodiversity and the idea. In a sense, in the past, people might have been worried about the panda or the tiger. Now they understand it's the whole we need to look after. And I suppose maybe the bumblebee is the panda of the pollinators maybe, and it's easy to focus on that and get people to understand and
I
relate.
think one of the yeah, I think one of the successes. I mean, it is a colleague of mine, Una Fitzpatrick, who's taken the lead on this with others. But very often, nature conservation is seen as a problem, and you know, it's always negative about that you shouldn't be doing things. Whereas I think one of the successes about the work with the pollination is it's changed it. It said, look, you know, we have a problem, but everyone can do something positive to help. So they've turned it on its head to say, you know, that let's be proactive, let's do positive things, and it's been a much more positive kind of proactive message that's getting out there. And as I say, you know, the work you're doing and others in terms of trying to raise awareness, increase the education around this, it's all having a benefit.
I think certainly there is a greater awareness. Ray, we have a question coming in on Facebook, and the question is, and I hope the answer is in May, but it probably is. The best question is, what is the best time of the year to visit the gardens?
I have a very well rehearsed and scripted answer. It's any time is a good time to visit Mount Congreve Gardens. It depends what the people are after, and I would say our curator tends to call May. The garden puts on its Riviera dress because there's the big show of the azaleas and the camellias, some of what we've seen there in the bluebells. There's different areas of the gardens, and if it's just colour you're after, then certainly March, April, May. But then June, we also have the big grand display of the peonies. In July, then it leads into the astilbes and the hydrangeas. And wisteria. So we've got something all times of the year. But if it's the big wow effect that you're really after, then for certain, unfortunately, April and May and into early June are key points, right when we've been closed this year.
Well, there's always next year, of course. Um,
Always
we've
next year.
we have had a great conversation, and I know we could go on for a lot longer, but we will have to start wrapping up here. I'm really grateful for Dr. Liam Lysaght and Ray Sinnot to come and share with us. Now, as we come to the end of the show, we're going to talk about other things that you can do, and we have lots of activities and resources on our website, and we've post new activities and new guides every day for you. So here are our activities for today. We have three nice activities there suitable for families, and the first one there is building a butterfly feeder, and that's a nice little activity and provides a pit stop for hungry butterflies. We have then a insect hotel, which is made with an old plastic bottle, and it provides a nice little residence for insect life in your garden. And then finally we have a garden survey or a habitat survey, and that is suitable for secondary school age, and they can practice their biology, and it's a great time of the year to be looking at biodiversity. We also have a number of guides every day, and our guides today are firstly a butterfly guide, and this is a lovely guide to identify 9 of the most common butterflies we have, and that is from the people in Glenveigh National Park. We also have a guide from the Burren National Park, and that is a bit more detailed, and it has about 24 butterflies on that. And then we also have a guide to bird watching, and that's from the Wicklow National Park. And they have, it's a nice poster with lots of birds that would be common around gardens. Now we also have a lovely picture shared with us on Facebook, and this is Tara and Neve, and they found birds' eggs when they were out on their walk. And the mother bird will throw the eggshells out after the chicks have hatched, and to clean up the nest and make more room. And that is a nice little find. And thank you for sharing it with us. And we will share with you a family pass for an OPW site of your choice. So if people can share their images and their experiences on social media, here is the contacts list, and there is Calmast WIT on Twitter. Instagram is the same. Facebook, it's Bealtaine Biodiversity, and you can also email us at calmast@wit.ie. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we will have lots more competitions, and we will have new guests tomorrow evening. We will have Yvonne Grace, who is a horticulture lecturer in WIT, and we will have Ian Edwards, who is a guide with Wicklow National Park. So they promise to be very interesting guests. So get your queries and pics and everything into us for that. And it is, of course, World Bee Day, and we will be talking about pollinators, and making pollinator friendly gardens. So thank you for being with us, and we hope to see you again tomorrow live at 5. In the meantime, stay home, stay safe, and cherish the biodiversity on your doorstep, and experience the extraordinary in the ordinary.